Live with no plan B, chapter 2. Listen, I want to go a little bit deeper in giving you a resource of how to overcome not having a plan B, but also moments of discouragement. I want to open up with this line that I wrote here. Discouragement can be the greatest cancer to the faith of a believer. I think that discouragement is inevitable. It will come. And you even see Jesus, when Satan asked to sift Peter as wheat, Jesus doesn't say no. What does he say? He says, I pray that your faith will not fail. A lot of times, right, discouragement will come. It's inevitable. But when we remain in discouragement and not allow that discouragement to turn into faith or find ways to war against it, that is when it becomes detrimental. I'm going to be walking through a few titles here of these of this chapter that I felt like were key. When we are living in moments of discouragement, there are different fruits that produces. Sometimes that produces bitterness. You might meet someone that was in a season of discouragement that didn't quite get out of it, or didn't, maybe learn to steward what God was doing in that moment, or it was just so intense there wasn't a community of believers around them to help them. Listen, the fruit of bitterness, the fruit of unforgiveness, even feeling like, man, God, have I made the right decision? These are all things that come from seasons of discouragement. But what you have to do is cut that root and realize that even just like the apostles, even in there's moments where you're in prison, there are still songs that can be sung. There are still great messages that can come from these places. Some of the most greatest messages that I've been able to share or communicate have come from seasons of discouragement. Obviously, as you're in the middle of it, does not feel like there's any way out, but there is hope. So if you're battling this right now in your walk with God, or you're reading this chapter and you're saying, this is me, Brian, I am in a moment of discouragement. I feel like I've labored, I've been faithful. You do the checklist. I've lived holy, I've lived faithful, I've given what God has asked. Why am I going through this? You have to remember, the devil might have asked to sift you as wheat. Doesn't mean Jesus said no. He might be praying that your faith will not fail. I want to read another piece here from this book. It's very short here. Christianity is not comfortable. I want to just break a lie for you here on this video that Christianity is comfortable. Listen, Jesus never promises comfort. He promises the cross. Progressive Christianity, we have seen that sweep our nation, promises the cross with no cost. It promises the price, the promise with no price. We must understand that Christianity is not about making the best version of us. God is less concerned with our happiness as He is our holiness, because He knows the full extent of us experiencing holiness will actually be happiness. I want to bring you through one more thing here. I want to read this to you. The battle before breakthrough. I have found that some of the most profound moments of breakthrough has had the most intense moments of battle. And I remember one time I was going through this season of discipling people, and I felt like, is anything I'm doing working? Are they growing? It seems so discouraging. It almost feels like some people are even getting worse in their walks with God. And I remember I went up to my pastor, Pastor Nets Gomez at the time, and I says, Pastor, I don't understand. I've given my life. I've given my yes. My salvation is not at risk here, but I feel like my calling is. I feel so worn out. What do I do? And he said this to me. He says, Brian, you have to remember that sometimes the first 7 years of discipling someone is not you even forming them. It's them forming you. A lot of times you must remember that the people whom God calls you to, the places or the calling, those first 7 to 10 years, that first decade is that calling forming you. It's that community forming you. You might feel like, but I have all this wisdom to give. There is so much when that wisdom is applied, and iron sharpens iron. Listen, you win when you don't quit. And I want to just pray that you would live with no plan B. I remember Bill Johnson shared this story once about this racquetball player. He was national champion, won all these championships. But what was interesting about this guy is he only had one hand. So when they interviewed him, right, he had an accident, he had one hand. They interviewed him and they said, how did you become the greatest at what you do? You're one of the greatest racquetball players ever. And this man replied this, I have no other option but this hand. When the ball comes to me, other people who have two hands are thinking, do I use left or do I use right? I only have one option. I believe deleting the plan B from your life leaves you with one option. You only have to go for broke for what God's called you. Father, I pray in the name of Jesus that those who are watching this, God, if they are discouraged, Lord, that you would turn their mourning into joy, that they would live with the plan A, the very thing that God's called them to. In Jesus' name, amen.